Joining me now, General Wesley Clark, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. He supports the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis. He served in the U.S. Army for 24 years. He was an advisor to the 1993 military working group that examined gays in the military, and he opposes the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Elaine Donnelly is founder and president of the Center for Military Readiness, which is also opposed to gays serving in the military. Clark Cooper is active Army reservist who served in Iraq. He's also executive director of the Log Cabin Republicans, which is challenging Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the courts. Tammy Schultz is the Director of National Security and Joint Warfare at the Marine Corps War College. She studied the Marine Corps for 15 years and believes that Don't Ask, Don't Tell should be repealed. And former Sergeant First Class Stacy Vasquez served in the Army for 12 years before being outed and discharged in 2003. We welcome all of you to this panel to discuss this really important issue at hand. First, if I might go to General Wesley Clark, my old sparring partner from the Balkan Wars. General, let me ask you, thank you for being here. You have heard now what the service chiefs have said in the testimony on Capitol Hill the last couple of days. What do you make of where they stand and their call that it shouldn't happen at a time of war?
Well, actually, they didn't all say it shouldn't happen at a time of war. The basic stand, what I got out of the testimony is, if you're going to make the decision, get it over with, take us out of the middle of the game, and then give us 6 months or so to do the training and education and get ready so the leadership can handle this. On a scale of 1 to 10, the report said this was about a 2 in terms of degree of difficulty and degree of disruption. Yes, it does add complexity, but not nearly as much complexity as the continuing uncertainty. The President said it's going to be done. I think one way or another, what the chiefs were telling you while they were trying to be loyal to all the people that serve under them, what they were telling you is, let's make this decision and move forward.
All right, well, let me ask our panel members right now. You heard the poll numbers that I just reported from the Don't Ask, Don't Tell survey. You've heard about Americans on gays in the military, and let me show you what they say. A poll that says, should gays be allowed to serve openly in the military? Yes, say 75% of people of the United States. And if you go deeper into those numbers, the poll finds that it's a majority amongst conservatives, amongst Republicans, and amongst seniors who believe that. And furthermore, when asked about the actual experience of serving in a unit with a co-worker who they believed was gay or lesbian, 92% of those surveyed stated that the unit's ability to work together was very good, good, or neither good nor poor. What do you say to that, Tammy Schultz? Is it time now, even though the nation is at war, and even though the Marines, by a significant minority, oppose it, those at the tip of the spear, and you are at the Marine War College?
I am, and let me first state that I'm offering my personal opinions here, and not on behalf of the Marine Corps, but I absolutely think it is time to repeal. Unlike desegregation, where the military was out in front of society, what the recent Pentagon study shows is that the military is actually in step with society on this one. In desegregation, you had 80% of the troops against basically desegregating the armed forces. Here you have, as the numbers that you pointed out show, an overwhelming majority that say that it will actually be just fine.
You're saying it's your personal opinion, but you have studied this on behalf of the Marine Corps and on behalf of the War College for a long time, 15 years or so. What effect will repeal have on troops, on Marines right now who are at war?
Well, I think it's important to point out that although the Marine Corps was the least supportive of the services, there was still, out of those surveyed, 60% that said this isn't a big issue. And I really agree with both the chairman of the Chiefs of Staff and the vice chairman, James Cartwright, who's a Marine, who said, you know what, war really focuses the soldier, airmen, Marines, and sailors' minds. Now is actually the time for change. They're singularly mission focused, and it's just simply not a huge deal. Now I do appreciate that the combat service numbers, the combat arms, were less supportive. However, when you take away the stereotypes and you ask them about actual experience of dealing with somebody who they believe to be gay or homosexual or lesbian, overwhelmingly the numbers were positive.
Elaine Donnelly, you are really the spokesperson for the conservative cause against homosexuals in the military. You've lobbied for a long time about this. What do you say, though, to a survey that now has surveyed the American people, surveyed the American military in a most exhaustive fashion, that says it's time? They didn't talk about repeal, but about gays serving in the military, that it would have no negative impact?
The question of whether the law should be retained or repealed was not even asked.
No, it wasn't specifically.
The question you're referring to is, do you know or like someone who is homosexual? Well, everyone would say yes to that, almost everyone, but that's not the question that really matters.
But forgive me, the question also was about how it would affect their unit's ability to perform combat.
And people who do clerical work at the Pentagon may have a view that that's not going to affect me, but the combat troops are the ones who matter. In the Army, combat troops and Marines, the infantry, and the Marine Corps combat troops in general, 67% opposed. Those troops said that there would be a negative effect. Now, for anyone to say that it's okay to make military life more difficult or more dangerous, I don't think that's really fair, because it's like putting stones in someone's rucksack and saying, okay, you're going to march the same length of time, and yes, you can do it because you're such a good soldier.
Let's just break this down. Let's break this down. Number one, you said that those surveyed were the administrative types in the Pentagon, whereas I understood
I'm
that
a combat veteran for starters, and all my men and the women that I went to war with, that I got shot at with during the Mahdi Uprising, would go back to war with me any day, and they would say so on this program. And these include combat-hardened veterans.
And the survey shows that 84% of Marine combat veterans who worked with somebody who were gay or lesbian said it did not affect their ability to get the job done.
You're mission focused. The last thing you're worried about, you're wanting to stay alive and keep your comrades alive.
You don't care if somebody's straight, you care if they can shoot straight.
Right, but 40 to 60% of the Marines, 58% basically, of those at the tip of the spear said that it would have a negative impact. And I've obviously been in the field, have reported on Marines, I've seen what they do. Why do you think they are so particularly upset about this then?
About a particular branch? Well, I would look at what the Joint Chiefs have talked about is uniform behavior. We're almost saying that we don't trust our service members, regardless of branch, that they're going to be able to get in line. For starters, there are cyclical annual briefs that take place. In fact, my unit's doing them this weekend about non-discrimination briefs, suicide prevention and awareness, awareness of PTSD. What's going to happen is when repeal is instituted, it will be essentially probably either a bullet point or there'll be training guidances to leadership to say it is no longer okay to discriminate or to have an arbitrary discharge based on one's orientation. It doesn't allow for bad behavior, and but everyone's still responsible under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and everyone still has to follow uniform conduct.
Isn't that right, Bob McGinnis, Lieutenant Colonel? There is a code of conduct for all serving in the military, whether heterosexual or homosexual or gay.
There's no question about it, and we do abide by the rules the civilians set for us, and ultimately, those admirals and generals are going to take orders and do their absolute best. The question comes up with what General Casey said the other day in testimony. Are we putting too much of a burden on our young people at a time of war? And he said, look, something's not going to get done, and Senator Levin was very angry about that. But going back to your original question, on all volunteers, this is a volunteer force. We have to be sensitive to those that we recruit. Who do we recruit? We recruit people that come from multi-generational military families. That's the vast majority. Then you recruit from people that come out of certain sections of the South or the Mountain West. And then you tend to recruit conservatives. Now, not all conservatives, as Chuck indicates, are of this persuasion. However, if you alienate that particular group, guess what? Congress has a much more difficult problem to resolve.
But getting back to the actual context and the issue at hand, the poll shows that in America at large, there is a majority who believe that they should serve, including conservatives and Republicans and seniors, the very people you're talking about.
Republican veterans served with
we did a scientific poll, too, that showed that the level of support was about 30 points less than what you're seeing from the Washington Post or other outlets. Civilians have a different view of the military because they lack the experience that the combat troops have. I'm going to go
to the Army General, General Wesley Clark. What about this notion that it cannot be done at war? And also, General Clark, if you could break down for us, when people talk about combat effectiveness, unit readiness, and morale, what precisely are they talking about? And how could potentially having gays serve openly affect that, if at all?
Well, first of all, I do agree with the point that the chairman and the vice chairman made, that if the military is focused on war, this is the ideal time to do it, because we're talking about building teamwork around a common purpose. And what the survey showed is that essentially all of the service members, 92% agree that they could serve in a unit in combat, and they could work together effectively and it wouldn't compromise mission readiness. I think a lot of the survey, honestly, it shows the effects of 6-8 months politicization, continuing coverage in the media, and some of it is just people in the military saying, look, just leave us alone and let us do our job. They come down on one side or the other of this. Let's just get on with it.
But General Clark,
I think that when you put people in combat and you organize them around a task, they're concerned about getting the job done. They're not concerned with what someone puts in a letter to home or who he or she holds dear in their heart.
I'm trying to figure out what is the definition of combat effectiveness and why that might be compromised by gays serving openly. Can you explain that?
Well, I think at the very, I think if you read the Medal of Honor citation that was recently presented in the White House, you would find what the definition of combat effectiveness is. People are willing to risk their lives and give their lives for each other in combat. And people do that because of respect. They do it because of teamwork. They do it because of training. But ultimately, those bonds are about being an American and being a team member. They're not about locker room talk, and they're not about sexual orientation. We awarded a Silver Star to a woman who was fantastic in the Army, clearing out a trench line of Iraqi insurgents in 2004, I believe it was, in Iraq. If you read her citation, it was as good as any citation I ever saw from the Vietnam War. She probably deserved more than a Silver Star and had nothing to do with her gender or her orientation. And I think that when Americans are in combat together, they pull together on a task, they work together based on a common culture of being an American and a commitment to the unit. And I think that's what's overriding in this case. And I think that's the message behind both the survey and the majority of the chief's testimony.